Hello and welcome to Ripple by Ihrm. We are so excited to have you with us. The question is, have you caught up with the previous episodes? We have had a wonderful opportunity to have a conversation with Lean Remuneration Commission. We have also spoken to Mr. Joseph Choge. In case you missed those episodes, please plug in and join us on our social media platforms at Ihrm Kenya across all platforms. We have a wonderful show lined up for you today. What opportunities are you seeing in Africa, and how can we as Africans capitalize on those opportunities?
I think as Africans, there's so much more we can do with our potential, right? By 2026, we're going to have the 5 fastest growing economies in this region and the largest young workforce. Now, it's either you ignore them and you get Gen Z protests, or you incorporate them and harness all that fantastic energy.
But before that, let us look at the activities that are coming up at Ihrm. In our previous episodes, we touched on tips of how to prepare your resume as well as how to apply for a job. And now we want to show you how to get yourself that job. Here are a few tips. Number 1, grooming. Ensure that you have well-ironed clothes and your hair is kempt. General cleanliness is important. Secondly, be polite to everyone. Ensure that you answer the questions that you have been asked. Keep your answers clear, quickly reflect and plan your answer to ensure that it's correct and precise. Have all requested documentation in a neat folder or file. And finally, ask insightful questions. Before we get to the expert corner, let us hear from our partners.
Welcome to Kara Productions, the home of consistent quality. We are a trusted service provider, trusted by a wide array of local, multinational and international organizations. Kara Productions is accredited by the Media Council of Kenya and the Kenya Film Classification Board. Kara Productions, we help tell your story.
Welcome back to Ripple by Ihrm. We are getting into the expert corner, and today we are delighted to have a lady who is leading a business in the East African region. She is the Chief Executive Officer, Deloitte East Africa, Madam Muraya. Thank you very much, Anne, for joining us. 28 years in the making. How did you get here? Share with us a little bit about your journey.
My journey's been interesting. How far back do you want me to go?
as far back as you can remember, we can sum it up. Yeah, 28 years is a while.
It's a long time.
Yes.
So I guess I was one of those, those people your parents tell you about who was always number 1 in class. I was those ones.
Oh, you're one of those guys.
Yes, I was one of those people.
Okay.
And I have audit evidence, so it's not just a story.
Yeah.
So I guess I did well in school. I was pretty good at maths and sciences. Up to O-levels. A-levels was a little bit harder. So initially I thought I was going to be a doctor. Then I hated biology. So then that ended that quite quickly. Then I did Bachelor of Education, Maths and Chemistry in KU. And I guess for a while I was wondering what I was going to do with that. I did teaching practice, and after that I had 2 months before we started university for 3rd year. And a friend of a friend who was a partner in Deloitte said, I think you'd like audit. Why don't you come and intern with us? Because I had 2 months to kill. That's how I got into Deloitte first as an intern. And I guess I must have done something right, because then the firm asked me to join once I finished my full degree, and that's where I started. Obviously, I had no accounting knowledge from having done maths and chemistry, so it was a bit of a hard slog in the beginning. So the first thing I needed to do was do all my accounting classes, which were all in the evening, and try and learn on steroids, because most of the people came from a BCom background. which I didn't, and they got exemption, so I was sort of trying to catch up. But I guess the point was try and be really, really good, and try and really learn fast. And then I guess over time I rose through the ranks until partner, and then head of professional practice, which is like the quality role, then audit leader, then CEO. So that's the really short version.
All right.
Yes.
It's rare to see someone who gets into an organization from the intern level and rise all the way to CEO. How do you explain that? What is it that you did, or what has that journey been like, that one, you have stayed, and two, that over time you have had impact to rise to a point where you're leading the business?
So first of all, for me, when I became CEO, I thought to myself exactly that this is profound, that I actually came in as a clueless intern, and here I am. So it's perhaps to show that it's possible in the first instance. But then, like I said, I put a lot of work in. I set very high standards for myself, and that's what I kept trying to do. I also I keep saying this, and I don't know why I keep doing this, but I also put up my hand to do hard things. Hard things always make you learn more, understand more, and I guess put you a little bit above everybody else. Yeah. And being in the same firm, I think I have done something different every 3 to 5 years. So I've not been doing the same thing. It might be in the same space. Yeah. But the work I was doing was very different. And I guess being in a professional services firm means you also see very many different clients, which adds to the variety. But I haven't actually been doing the same thing for more than, I don't even think I got to 4 most of the time. It was 3 to 4 years that I kept changing things. So first I set very high standards for myself. I asked to do harder things. I wasn't afraid to do them. And I put up my hand to do different interesting things, which is what then, I guess, gets you noticed, widens your breadth. In a firm like ours, I got to interact with people right across the world. So I have friends literally in every continent. Yeah. And once you do that, you've interacted with all of those people, you then have a wider breadth. There's also our clients, and being curious about what they do, understanding their businesses, because that's how you advise them better, how you understand their numbers better, and that sort of thing. So mostly setting very high standards for yourself and trying to always be really, really, really good at what you do.
So it was never boring. There was always something new.
Boring is not a word I'm going to use.
All right, because you find most younger people, especially, we have seen this with the HR space, and it's a struggle for professionals, retaining employees. Yes. Everybody wants to be on the move, 2-3 years, but I like that there was movement.
There was movement.
It was in the same organization, but yes, there was movement.
There was movement.
So movement is still important, but it can be in the same organization.
It can be in the same organization, and for me, I keep saying I have the attention span of a 2-year-old, so I would get bored easily. So if I'm still here, it means it certainly wasn't boring. There was lots of different interesting things to do.
All right. I'm curious about your personality, because you said you raise your hand to do the hard thing. That is rare. Most people will run away from hard things. And the attention span of a 2-year-old, how would you describe yourself then as in terms of your personality?
So let me give you a little bit of context to that. One of the hard things I started to do was to be a facilitator, to teach within the firm.
Oh, so the teaching came in handy eventually.
Absolutely. In the end, it did actually come in handy. Yeah. And I did that because sometimes I get really bored in class, but I also found that I learn better when I teach. If you're teaching, you have to know your subject matter really, really well. I'm very curious. Okay. I get into lots of rabbit holes because I just want to know. So I read about this, that, the other, everything. Like your production crew, I'm very particular about things, how they look, yeah, where they're set. So I can be a little nitpicky about certain details, but also I have it's never that serious kind of view. We're not doctors, no one will die. But at the same time,
Yeah.
I expect the best out of you. Um,
And even out of yourself.
and out of
I'll pick
myself.
that,
Yes, and out of myself.
Yeah.
But also, I think you have to balance work with life. So I also enjoy life. I take time to take care of myself and be with my friends and families and do interesting things. So I think I'm collaborative, but mostly I'm really, really curious. There are very many things I do from a curiosity point of view.
All right. And how does that, your perspective, rub onto how you lead your team? Because you just said you're collaborative. Is that something that you transfer to how your team works, how you work with your team?
I believe in lifting people up. There's so many people who helped me in my career growing up, and part of it was tossing me straight into the deep end. But I believe in making sure you're lifting people up all the time. Some of it you have to do it as they're kicking and screaming because they think it's too hard or whatever. So for me, I'm always trying to learn. I want the teams I'm working with to get better. Actually, I hope they get better than me because then I have very little to do. So I'm also not afraid of you getting better than me. So when you're learning, I'm going to tell you, ask me as many questions as you want. But then as we continue, I will continue to raise my standards of you and I continue to expect good of you. And I think everyone knows that. I like to listen. I listen a lot because then I know where you're coming from, then I know how to help you, then I also want to know what you think. So, and what your point of view is, both from how it'll help me do this, but also I'm curious. So that's how it has helped me, because when you're curious about people, you learn more about them, and then you work with them better.
Yeah. Let's come to HR professionals. You've just talked about people and learning and being curious about people. HR professionals are responsible for people on the day-to-day. And you have had the opportunity to work with many organizations. I'm sure appreciate the work of different HR professionals. How can HR professionals support business leaders like yourselves and organizations to do better? What do you expect of them?
All organizations are all about people. And if you're not taking care of the people well, then the whole organization has no chance at all. So first, it's to make sure there's a good working environment in the first instance. It's not the work of HR, it's the work of the people working with the people. But HR can advise, because they're not the ones with people all the time. But at the same time, it's also making sure, just as you're helping the people who are learning, you're not soft. You have to be tough on non-performance because it's unfair to everyone if some people are not pulling their weight. So they also need to make sure that is being followed up, right? They have to call out toxic behavior because, again, it messes up everyone, okay? They have to provide really good information to the leaders. I need you as the HR person to be my advisor of how to deal with the people. So what are the statistics you're seeing? What are the trends you're seeing? What new things do you want us to try? Don't just do process. Being a proper advisor to the leaders is what is absolutely key. Yeah.
So bring the numbers as well. Support your argument.
Support my argument. Don't throw people at the problem. I think we have a problem here. Let's get 2 more people. No.
Let's figure out the
problem and fix it. Number one. But also, is that the right person? Do we need a different person to do this, right? Do we need more innovation people? How are they helping us do things differently? So it's everything. How are we taking care of people? What's the mental health like? The real mental health, not the sob stories. But also, are we creating an environment people want to work in? And even if it's me who's the problem, you need to tell me that I am the problem.
Having those tough conversations. We have had the opportunities at IHRM to work with counties, and governors, time over, they say if you can help me fix my people, I think I'll be okay. Has that been your experience working with organizations across the region? If we take care of people, then the business will be fine.
I think that works globally. It works everywhere. The organization is all about people. But I don't know about fixing people. I think it's fixing the environment people are in. And then the leaders should inspire their people so that they're happy to go to work.
So it's a whole thing. It's a
It's
whole
a whole
system.
ecosystem.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the other stuff has to work. If we have old computers that don't work, it's frustrating. If we're living in a suffocated place, it's difficult, right? If the building doesn't look nice, then you don't actually want to sit there. So it's the whole ecosystem. Yeah.
So we take care of everything else, and as in we design thinking. Think
Design
of it
thinking.
holistically.
You have to think
not
it from
parts.
a macro perspective, and HR is a critical part of it.
All right.
Yeah.
You're a lady of firsts. First female audit leader at Deloitte East Africa region, first Africa managing partner responsible for business and policy. You talked about expecting the best of yourself and excellence and working hard to achieve that. I want to spin this because we always ask, how has being a woman worked for you? How has being a woman enabled you to achieve this success?
So sadly, we're in 2024 and it should be like that, but we're still judged differently. Yeah, we're still judged differently. So the first thing is you have to make sure that there's no fault in your work at all. Yeah, don't ever go to, is it because I'm a woman, before you've checked yourself, yeah, and made sure you've done the right things and you're doing them well.
Yeah.
But then I got asked this question, I think last weekend, where they're saying, did you have to be more like a man? And I said, hell no, I'm unapologetically feminine. No, yeah. I have no apologies about it.
Yeah.
So I think I always say do it like a girl. It's very different. It's a very different way of approaching it. You can be assertive without being aggressive. You can make your point quietly. So it's to still do things, but within your own personality. An interesting thing is, some context, my children are much taller than me, so they call me little. So the problem with being little is that people underestimate you, but it's also an amazing advantage because they don't see you come.
Yeah. They're never ready for you.
No.
All right. Were you always like that? Or have you learned it over time? Does your background have something to do with having that perspective? Because it's very easy to say they did that because I'm a woman, or, how did you get there?
So maybe a few things. From my parents, they had confidence in me. They were like, you can do it. So I guess you don't come from doubting yourself in the first instance. Yeah. It might have helped that I grew up with boys. So when I'm in an all-male profession, I'm not actually intimidated. I'm fine.
In your zone, yeah.
So there's probably many times I'm not actually actively thinking about I am a woman in this environment because I'm just trying to get my work done. It'll still come out, obviously. But yes, it's not the first thing in my mind at all. So part of it is being given the confidence growing up. A lot of it is learning over time. And not wanting to change into something I'm not, and figuring out how to still do me, but get results.
All right.
Yeah.
I've read a little about you, not even for this context, actually, if I'm being honest. I like to read about women who are doing well. And you've extensively spoken about your family and how they have influenced who you are. How have you balanced? You've talked about your children. How has that been? I don't know whether I'll be preempting. You spoke about I don't have to go and buy the tomatoes myself. If somebody else can do it, those tomatoes will still be in the house.
So I saw that quote somewhere and I had to call Miko to say, now I'm the tomato quote person.
Anyway, it makes sense.
It does.
Yes, it does.
So I call it life work integration just because I love my children and I love my work, and all of you need to understand I love you, right? So let's work with this and let's see how we blend it. When they were little, my kids' school things were in my calendar like any other meeting, right? But even when I had another meeting and I couldn't go, I tell them I can't. Yeah. Some of it is, again, asking the hard questions. So, you know, when there's this parents, teachers things, but there's one I had where I couldn't show up, either I was away or I was in a board meeting or something. Yeah. I went and asked the teachers, can I have one separately? And they said, we never do that. I said, I don't know why you never do it, I'm asking. So they kicked and screamed, but they agreed. Eventually. Yeah, so you just ask. Some of it is, you probably just didn't ask. Because like I said, both of them are important to me. So I want them to work. So at work, you know, I have my kids and the family. And at home, you know, I also have my work. So all of you need to work together to make sure it's working for all of us. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe so that's why I call it integration.
Maybe some context on the tomato story, because we might lose some people and wonder what was this tomato business.
So in the interview that Irene is talking about, the other thing is I don't do anything I don't have to do, right? And that was the context of no one actually cares how the tomato lands in the house as long as it's there. If there's food, there's food. It doesn't matter how it came. So I am really good at outsourcing. I don't do anything I don't have to do. I remember earlier on trying to go to the market to get vegetables, and I'm like, this is not good use of my time. Just send someone to get it. Yeah, so I don't do anything I don't have to do.
Yeah. Sometimes as women, we are too hard on ourselves when it's really unnecessary.
No one cares.
No one cares how the tomatoes got here. They're just happy the tomatoes are in the house.
Oh. No, actually, they don't even know those tomatoes in the food.
There's just food and it's ready. Yes. All right. Let's move back to the business. You have led your business into doing quite a number of social action, including tree planting. You're big on sustainability. How important is this sustainability conversation for business and for posterity?
It's absolutely important because organizations need to seek to make an impact in the environment they're in. So first of all, I think we should all do better for the planet. So for example, you'll see we didn't give you any water in plastic bottles. We don't have any. We only have the dispenser and glasses because we don't want the plastics as part of that. We recycle all our paper, the shredded one. And then we plant lots of trees. It's that we have to take care of the planet, number one. Number two, many of us and many of the people we want to attract want to be in an organization that cares about sustainability. So in the first instance, because you interview people, but people also want to know the organization they're getting into, we can't attract the best people if we're not a sustainability-focused organization.
Yes. Yeah. All right. That's important. We have had conversations around green HRM and the opportunities that are there. Do you see, especially for younger people and in relation to employment, can we use the opportunities around green HRM to create more work and promote the sustainability you're talking about?
Absolutely. So one of the things we do in Deloitte is everyone does an e-learning on sustainability, like every single person. And when we started it probably 3 years ago, we had everyone across the globe do it. And they loved it because it showed them how you do it in your own little way. Don't leave chargers hanging. When you're washing your hands, shut down the tap first. Do all of those little things that build up on that. Yeah. So first of all, there's that, making sure that in the first instance, you're, as an individual, sustainable. Making sure that in the organization, you're doing sustainable things. But then also in all these other different ways that people are doing sustainability, you're then creating different ways of working. You're also creating different jobs. Like if you're the organizations that are dealing with electronic waste. If you're all the paper industries that are recycling paper, if you're working on composting, this creates a whole ecosystem and chain that again continues to uplift lives. The room we're sitting in, we first set it up as a hub for training small and micro entrepreneurs, because a lot of the enterprises fail because they haven't set up their HR, their accounting, their tax, the organization structure. Yeah. So we're using our skills to help them do that. So we do create a lot of things by trying to be sustainable, not just for the environment, but to create sustainable economies and that sort of thing.
All right, that's wonderful. You sit in a committee that's driving the strategic direction of your business in Africa. What opportunities are you seeing in Africa, and how can we as Africans capitalize on those opportunities?
I think as Africans, there's so much more we can do with our potential, right? By 2026, we're going to have the 5 fastest growing economies in this region, and the largest young workforce. Now, it's either you ignore them and you get Gen Z protests, or you incorporate them and harness all that fantastic energy, and train people, allow them to innovate, give them the space to find different ways of doing things, but then also lend your experience for them to do it better. So Africa has great potential. There's so much that the world needs from us, and we just need to harness it and be able to grow and thrive. We also need to work with each other a lot more than we do. Some of the economic blocs are starting to do that. I think we just need to do a lot more by far.
All right. How have you as Deloitte incorporated that to harness this potential with the younger population?
First of all, I will say 70% of the population here is under 30.
Wow.
So I'm the relic.
They come to you and they need to consult on history.
History, like Fred Flintstone's Stone Age.
Wow.
Yeah? So that's who we have.
Yeah.
So when people say we don't know how to deal with young people, I'm like, who are you working with? So we're the people who deal with them all the time.
Yeah.
I think they're great people. I think we were the Gen Z equivalent when we were that age, because we asked hard questions, we want to do things differently. So I think people are giving them a bad name and not remembering that you were those people when you were that age.
Yeah.
And people have to change. You can't act the same way you did in 1906.
It's true. It's true. It's about time. And change is not always bad. So anyway.
No, I think change is great. I mean, imagine all the things we couldn't do pre-COVID, and all the innovation that happens.
We are comfortable now.
And we're completely comfortable with this. So I love it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as we conclude this, are you thinking legacy? 28 years is not a short time. Are you at a point where you're thinking, what do I want my story to be? Or you still have the energy to keep going? What's next for Anne?
I always want to grow. I always want to do better. So I remain curious, so that's it. I think legacy is overstated. It's the things you do every day to people and how the outcomes come that become your legacy, rather than sitting and saying, I want my legacy to be, right? And I think when you say, I want my legacy to be, then it's probably too narrow. And maybe that's not what even people will remember you by.
Yeah.
They'll remember you by what actions did you do, what impact did you make while you were the one who's the leader, how did you impact me personally in terms of how we interact. I think that's legacy, but for me, it's mostly that my being there mattered. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be a big, bold thing.
One day something is unveiled.
No, that my being there mattered.
Yeah, mattered. It
Yes.
made a difference.
Yes.
That is a perfect way to end it. That it's about the now, the impact I'm having every day, and if I'm being the best version of myself in everything that I'm doing. Wow, that was a great conversation. Thank you, Anne, for making the time to speak to us. I am sure that this conversation is going to kick off some excitement, especially with the HR professionals and business leaders like yourself. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Irene.
All right. And that brings us to the end of Ripple by Ihrm. We have had a wonderful conversation with Miss Anne Muraya, the CEO of Deloitte East Africa. Until next time, I've been your host, Irene Kimashia.